Hey, what's up guys, DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Sacred Beast deck profile. So I'm really excited to you guys because this deck just got a major boost off the list with giving us 3 skill drains. And I've changed up this deck a lot from the previous build with all the new tech cards that I'm playing in this deck. I am super excited to show you guys this deck. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name searched in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Raviel, Lord of Phantasms. This card is a great card to summon to your side of the field and has 4,000 attack points. This card is absolutely humongous, and it can even generate tokens. It has the ability that it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by tributing 3 fiend monsters, and each time your opponent normal summons a monster, you get to special summon a phantasm token to your side of the field. It also has the ability that you can once per turn tribute a monster, and this card gains attack equal to the tribute monster's original attack until the end phase of the turn, which is a great effect for this card to have, that it can get even bigger than 4,000, and it's constantly generating you tokens to be able to use for link summoning. We then play 2 copies of Haman, Lord of Striking Thunder. This card is a great card in this deck as a 2-up, and it has the ability it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special from your hand by sending 3 face-up continuous spell cards that you control to the graveyard. And if this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sent it to the graveyard, you inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent. So even with this 4,000 attack point monster, if your opponent's putting the cards in defense position, you can still do some damage with this card's effect. It also has the ability, while this card is in face-up defense position, your opponent cannot target other monsters for attacks except for this card, which is a really powerful effect for this card to have, to basically put it in defense position, and your opponent can only attack this card, especially with all the monsters in this deck that actually have 0 attack. We then play a single copy of Uriah, Lord of Searing Flames. This card can get absolutely humongous in this deck. It is a super awesome card. It can't be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by sending 3 face-up trap cards you control to the graveyard, and it gains 1,000 attack for each continuous trap in your graveyard, which is a super awesome effect, especially with all of the continuous traps we're playing in this deck. It also has the ability that you can target one set spell or trap your opponent controls and destroy it, and neither player can activate spells and traps in response to this card's activation, which is a super good effect to be able to just basically Night Beam one of your opponent's cards. We then play 3 copies of Dark Summoning Beast. Dark Summoning Beast is a great 3-of because all of those summoning restrictions for your Sacred Beast actually make it a little difficult to summon them on their own way by themselves, where you have to tribute 3 fiends, send 3 continuous spells or continuous traps to the graveyard to be able to summon them. This card actually bypasses it very easily because it has the ability that you can tribute this card to special summon out a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel from your hand or deck, completely ignoring their summoning conditions. So this card is super easy to summon to your field and lets you summon them to your side of the field, but it only has one downside, that when you use that effect, you can't attack for the rest of the turn, and you can only effect this card once per turn. You can also banish this card from the graveyard to add a Uriah, Haman, or a Raviel from your deck to your hand, which is a pretty good effect to also give you a search. We then play 3 copies of the single best normal summon in this entire deck, and that is 3 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast. Dark Beckoning Beast is a crazy powerful card because it has the ability, when this card is normal summoned, you can add a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel card, or a card that specifically lists them in the text from your deck to your hand. It also has the ability that during the main phase, you can normal summon a fiend monster with 0 attack and defense in addition to your normal summoner set. Giving you additional normal summon and being the searcher of the deck is a great card effect to have because you can basically normal summon this, search the copy of the Dark Summoning Beast, and then tribute summon it out to your side of the field using your Dark Beckoning Beast to just give you that additional summon. It's super helpful and super easy to use the combo. We then play 3 copies of Chaos Summoning Beast. Chaos Summoning Beast is super good as well because you can tribute this card to special summon either Uriah, Haman, or Raviel from your hand, ignoring their summoning conditions, and you can banish this card from the graveyard to add a Fallen Paradise from your deck to your hand, which is a crazy powerful field spell that we have in this deck that really helps out, especially when you have skill drain face up. When you have that card and one of your Sacred Beasts on the field, you have a insanely powerful field. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Foolish Burial because so many of our cards actually work in the graveyard, like our copies of the Dark Summoning Beast and our Chaos Summoning Beast work very well in this deck in the graveyard, so Foolish Burial is a great card to have. But a single copy of Call by the Grave, just so we don't get hand trapped. It's very important that we get our searches through and our special summons of our Sacred Beasts out. But a single copy of Dimension Fusion Destruction. This is the card that you're going to be using to summon out either one of your Armatile monsters. It has the ability to banish from your hand, field, or graveyard the fusion materials listed on a Phantasm Fusion monster, and then special summon the monster from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. And you take no battle damage from attacks involving that monster, special summon by this effect, and if you control a Uriah, Haman, or a Raviol, you don't have to control all three, just one of the three, your opponent cannot activate cards and effects in response to this card's activation, basically making it a speed spell 4 if you control a Uriah, Haman, or Raviol, or any of your Sacred Beasts. We then play just a single copy of Deck Lockdown. There is a reason I'm just playing one copy of this card. It's easy to get back out of the graveyard with another card that we're playing, but it has the ability that neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing them, and monsters cannot be special summoned from the main deck and destroy this card during your second standby phase after activation. That's totally fine. We can keep rolling it with one of the tech cards or one of the main cards that we're playing in the deck, and so this card is a great tech card in this build. We then play a single copy of Cerulean Skyfire. This card is insanely powerful because it has the ability to special summon a Haman, Lord of Striking Thunder, using its own procedures. You also can use face down spell cards that you control as well. And then once per turn, while you control a Haman, it has the ability to negate any activation of the spell or trap activated by your opponent by changing Haman to defense position, which is pretty good to give you a spell and trap negation in this deck. It also has the ability that you can, if a face-up Uriah, Haman, or Raviol leaves the field, then you get to take no damage for the rest of the turn, which is pretty good. We then play two copies of Fallen Paradise. Fallen Paradise is an insanely powerful field spell that has the ability that your opponent cannot target Uriah, Haman, or Raviol, or even Armatile in your main monster zone, or in any of your monster zones with card effects, and also, while you control them, if you control a Uriah, Haman, or Raviol, then you get to draw 2 cards extra, which is really, really good every single turn, which is an insanely powerful effect, giving it basically where those monsters cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control them is just an insane ability to make it so that they're just totally protected. I love this card, and it helps out the deck so much. We then play 3 copies of Opening of the Spirit Gates. Opening the Spirit Gates is the card and the reason I'm actually playing just a single copy of Cerulean Skyfire and Deck Lockdown, because it has the ability that when this card is activated, you can add a Uriah, Haman, or a Raviol, or one monster that specifically lists them from in its text from your deck to your hand. So you can add Dark Beckoning Beast, Dark Summoning Beast, your any of your beast monsters, Cerulean Skyfire, Dimension Fusion Destruction. You can add any of those cards that you need from your deck to your hand. It also has the ability that you can once per turn discard 1 card to special summon a fiend monster with 0 attack or 0 defense from your graveyard. And then once per turn also, if you control a level 10 monster, which all of your Sacred Beasts are, then you can add a continuous spell from your graveyard to your hand. Basically, once you put this on the field, you can constantly get back your Deck Lockdown every single turn, or if it gets destroyed, you can just put it back on the field with your copy of Opening of the Spirit Gates, which makes it absolutely crazy. We then play 3 copies of the Map. This card is a great card to be able to search out your copies of your Beast, or even a copy of Uriah. It has the ability that at the start of your main phase 1, you can add 1 monster with 0 attack from your deck to your hand, but half your life points after adding it to your hand. Until the end of the next turn, this card was activated. You cannot activate the added monster's effect or the effects of monsters with the same name until you normal summon that monster, which comes in very, very handy because you're always going to be normal summoning out any one of your beast monsters, and if you need to, you can wait it out with Uriah. We then play 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is here because you can boost up Uriah with a lot of the continuous traps we play in the deck, and you can even use cards like your Deck Lockdown to send to the graveyard or Cerulean Skyfire to be able to bring them back with your copy of Opening of the Spirit Gate. So this card helps you thin the deck a little bit while also sending key cards that you want in the graveyard to the graveyard. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Hyper Blaze. I love this card in this deck. It helps me OTK the opponent so easy with Uriah because it lets you special summon Uriah using its own procedures. You can also use face down traps that you control. And then once per battle, when an attack is declared involving your Uriah, you can send one trap from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and its attack and defense become the total number of face-up trap cards on the field and in the graveyards times 1,000 for the rest of the turn. And then once per turn, you can discard a card and add to your hand or special summon a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel from your graveyard, ignoring their summoning conditions. So I really like this card. It helps you recover your plays a lot, and even if you don't use the effect with Uriah, you can discard a card to special summon back your copy of Uriah, Haman, or Raviel back from the graveyard, so it's kind of a monster reborn. So this card is really good as a one-of. We then play 3 copies of Awakening of the Sacred Beasts. This card is a really insane card, and I love this card. Depending on the amount of Sacred Beasts you have on the field, depend on the effects that you get. If you only control 1 Sacred Beast, then each time your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you gain life points equal to the attack of the monster that they summoned, which is really good because you can get a lot of life points in this deck off this one card. Or if you have 2 Sacred Beasts on your side of the field, you can negate the activation of effects of monsters your opponent controls, basically giving you 6 copies of Skill Drain, which is insane. Or if you activate the 3 effect, and then you control 3 of your Sacred Beasts, any monster sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. Now, you have to control Uriah, Haman, and Raviel. You can't control duplicates. You have to control just them individually, so that is really important. They have to have different names. It also has a really good effect that once per turn, if you control a level 10 monster, you can add a continuous trap from your graveyard to your hand, making your copies of Foolish Burial Goods even better because you can get back your cards like your Hyper Blaze, or even Skill Drain, or one of the other tech cards that I'm playing. We're then playing 3 copies of Skill Drain. Skill Drain is extremely important in this deck. I cannot believe this card is at 3 still, and it's an insanely powerful card that lets you pay 1,000 life points, and as long as this card remains face on the field, all face-up effect monsters on the field have their effect negated. So this card is really good in this deck because basically if we negate the effects after we have 2 of our Sacred Beasts on the field, like our copies of Raviel and Haman, they're still 4,000 attack point monsters, so it hurts the opponent a lot more than it hurts us. We then play 3 copies of Crackdown. Crackdown is here because you can tank your opponent's monsters away, because it has the ability to activate this card. You target a face-up monster your opponent controls, take control of that monster, and then while you control that monster, it can't attack or activate its effects, which is a really important effect for this card because basically you're going to stop your opponent from attacking, but it also makes it so you can use it for link summoning. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Armatile, the Chaos Phantom, Phantom of Fury. This card is so good in this deck because it has the ability that this card's name becomes Armatile while in the field, and then once per turn during your main phase you can give control of this card to your opponent, and then once per turn during the end phase, if this card is controlled was changed, then you can banish all cards that you control. And it also has the ability, or you have to banish, it's mandatory to banish all cards that you control, and then the owner of this card special summons an Armatile, the Chaos Phantom, from their extra deck, ignoring their summoning conditions, setting you up for an OTK. Now this card is a very interesting card because basically you just give it to the opponent, and then during the end phase it banishes everything including this, and then you're able, because you're the original owner of the card, to special summon out your copy of Armatile, which during your turn only gains 10,000 attack points, letting you go in for an OTK, which is pretty good. It can't be destroyed by battle as well, which is also pretty helpful on a 0 attack point monster during your opponent's turn. We then play a single copy of Access Code because it gives us additional pops in the deck. It's really helpful. You don't have to play it. You can play Appaloosa if you want to. I just don't really feel a need for it with the copies of my Skill Drain in the deck and the Awakening of the Sacred Beast. I just like the Access Code Talker because it's here and it gives me pops if I need it, but it's not like you don't have to have it for the deck. We then play a single copy of Boral Sword because it helps us OTK in the deck. Really helpful card just in case you can go into it. I play a single copy of Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, because we play so many high level monsters in this deck. It's easy to summon. Again, kind of one of those cards you don't have to play it if you don't want to. You can change it out for like a Nightmare Cerberus to make the deck a little bit more budget, but I have it so I wanted to play it in the deck. It has the ability that 3 monsters with different names, and has the ability when it destroys a monster of a battle, it either gains 1,500, can make a second attack, or can banish a card on the field, which is pretty good. We then play a single copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, Phoenix to pop spells and traps, and IP Masquerena because we can link summon during our opponent's turn, which is pretty good with this card. One copy of Pentastag so we can do piercing damage with Armityle, which is insane. One copy of Anaconda because we can use it with Dimension Fusion Destruction, so you can basically go into your copies of Armityle at any time as long as you have 2 monsters on the field and you have your Sacred Beasts at your disposal to go into this card. 2 copies of Alamirage. Alamirage is really good because you can link away your copies of your 0 attack point monsters to be able to get them in the graveyard so you can banish them for their cards effects, like your copy of the Chaos Summoning Beast. 1 copy of Gustav Max because we can do 2,000 burn damage to end games with this card. Juggernaut Libby because we can make Juggernaut Libby in this deck very easily and have a 6,000 attack point monster. And number 35 because with the Awakening of the Sacred Beast, you're going to be gaining a lot of life points, and this card makes you gain attack points equal to the difference between your life points and your opponent's life points. So that can be upwards of like 20,000. So this card can make your monsters go upwards of like 20,000 or however high your life points end up going. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really, really fun deck to play with. I highly recommend that if you've never played with Sacred Beast, you definitely should because it is a crazy fun deck. It's really, really budget to be able to play the main deck besides the copies of Skill Drain, which I'm sure will get a reprint soon. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.